We get two great resurrection stories today, 2 weeks early, because on Easter we'll come back and talk about the resurrection, but we get a little taste of it today. We hear the word resurrection, and yes, we know what that word means as it pertains to what Jesus did on that first Easter morning. It's the reason we're all here as Christians, but we use it in other ways too. We may talk about something like an old idea being resurrected. We may talk about breathing new life into something or restarting something. We may use it in our lives as well, such as when we paint or remodel a room in our house. We do it, we look at it, and we might say we just gave new life to it. Perhaps in this time of isolation and self-quarantine, you're seeing more places in our lives where this might need to be done. We look at things with new eyes. We generate new ideas. We develop new ways to do old things. Like this. Who would have guessed 10 years ago that we'd be live streaming services on Sunday morning, and not because we wanted to, because we had to. What we're experiencing now makes my point, and you're probably looking around your house right now saying, yeah, we could use a little redoing here. We could breathe some new life into this place. Maybe you're making a to-do list now. Resurrection sounds great right now, doesn't it? We need a resurrection, and we'll get one. For sure in 2 weeks, but also later, when we are restored to our usual way of doing things, of living, though it will be forever changed. I think it's safe to say that when Jesus was resurrected, things were certainly forever changed. We are experiencing new ways right now, but our readings today speak to literal resurrection. We first heard that familiar story from Ezekiel, the Valley of Dry Bones, one of the reading choices we also have during the Easter Vigil every year. In this story, the bones and the bodies are resurrected. God tells Ezekiel to prophesy to these bones, that they may come together, and they do. The bones come together, and sinews and flesh come upon the bones. But notice what they do when this happens. They don't do anything. They just lay there on the ground. But then God tells Ezekiel to prophesy that the breath may come into them. It is then, as new life is literally breathed into them, that they come alive. When this happens, they stand up and are ready to do whatever God calls them to do. And remember, these are a people who are in exile. These are a people of Israel who are yearning to be led home. God says to Ezekiel to prophesy that they may be returned to their home, that they may be brought back in glory to their own soil. And if you think about it, it's what we want too, isn't it? We want to be restored to our normal way of doing things. But it's also what we believe, that in the resurrection, God will bring us to our heavenly home. In the resurrection, we are made a new creation. We have new life breathed into us, and we live that new life in Christ. Even the psalm today talks about it. Out of the depths I call to you. There's that yearning. Lord, hear my cry and the voice of my supplication. My soul waits for you. In your word is my hope. My soul waits for you more than watchmen for the morning. And I love that line. More than watchmen for the morning. There's a yearning, a longing for the hope and peace that comes on the other side. Night to morning, darkness to light. There's life in the Spirit, life and hope. That's what we hear in Ezekiel. It's only when the Spirit comes into the bodies that they live, that there is life, that there is hope, and they stand ready to do God's will. Without the Spirit, they can do nothing. Jesus is told that his friend Lazarus is ill. He tells the disciples, we're going to wait. Our friend Lazarus is sleeping. We're going to wait. And Jesus knows that he could go there. He knows he could heal him, and everything would be okay, except it wouldn't. It wouldn't be okay, because Jesus needs this moment to teach, to reveal God's glory, so that those who are there to see it might come to believe. Later, Jesus says, let's go to Bethany. The disciples, who don't get it, say, well, Jesus, if he is only sleeping, he'll be fine. Jesus says very plainly, Lazarus is dead. Let us go and reawaken our friend. Let us go, he is saying, so I may breathe new life into him. So they go to Bethany, and Martha comes and greets Jesus, and Martha doesn't quite understand it yet either. And she says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother might not have died. And Jesus says, Martha, I am the resurrection. I am the life. Even though you die, you will be alive. Do you believe this? And she says yes, but I'm not sure she really understands it. But Jesus came there so that God's glory might be revealed. We get a foreshadowing of what is to come. This is Jesus' last great act in John's Gospel before he himself dies on a cross and is raised from the dead. It shows us that even he can conquer death. Even he has power over death. But it's even greater when the death is his own. He comes to Lazarus' grave and he tells them to take the stone away. And Martha says, Lord, he's been dead for 4 days. Now this is significant, because Jewish thought was that the soul would linger with the body for 3 days after death, and then it would go away. Jesus deliberately waits until the 4th day, so that there would be no doubt about what he would do. And he calls for Lazarus, and Lazarus comes out with new life in him, and Jesus says, unbind him. Take away anything that would keep him from doing what God has called him to do. Unbind him and let him go, so that he may live his life, his new life, in the way that he is called to live it. I am the resurrection and the life, says the Lord. He gives us that life in the Spirit. He gives us the new life that we receive in baptism and that we will again receive in the resurrection. Jesus called for Lazarus to come out, and he does. And we're told that people who were there, who saw it, began to believe. They believed because they saw what happened. But in just a few weeks from now, we'll hear the story of Thomas, and Jesus telling him, blessed are those who have not seen, and yet have come to believe. Jesus, in his lifetime, still needed people to see, or better yet, the people themselves still needed to see that God's glory could be revealed, so that God's glory could be revealed. In 2 weeks, we'll be right here to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus himself, the greatest day there is in the life of the church. New life breathed into a world in need, particularly important and needed at this time, as we are a world in great need. May we be resurrected in this coming season of Easter. May we have that new life breathed into us so that we may stand and be ready to do what God calls us to do in Christ Jesus, even if it's while isolating ourselves and keeping a safe distance from others. May we still be ready to answer our calling.